Hey, hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good, man. What's going on, brother?
Hey, good.
Were
Yeah,
you able to hear the introduction or not?
yeah, sorry about that. I think that was some. I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I just gave the introduction to the show. So I want to welcome you, man. Thank you for taking the time of your evening or morning, wherever you are, and joining us here, man. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, like looking forward to talk about Quicksilver, Cosmos, and everything in between.
Perfect, man. So I guess I can give sort of my summary on Quicksilver, then we'll pass it on to you. So if you guys don't know, LSD is basically liquid staking derivatives, and essentially Quicksilver is a protocol in Cosmos that provides again liquid staking, but it does implement IBC, so it is interchain, and it goes through permissionless and sovereign blockchains. And essentially, the network leverages the interchain communication from IBC to onboard the new zones and it also accounts for the naturally enhanced security. Decentralization is a core value, and it's also limit. It's also it also has limitless scalability via its design, and essentially secures the network through its staking. And the locked up tokens essentially secure the network. That's sort of like a TLDR. But let's get into the nitty gritty. Vish, what's going on, man? What are you guys building over at Quicksilver Protocol? What's been going on? I know you guys have gone live over the last month or so.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess as you mentioned, like Quicksilver is a liquid staking protocol in Cosmos, right? Like the way we saw it, Cosmos always had this like capital efficiency issue. There was no DeFi in Cosmos. It essentially wasn't going to take off because all your assets were locked in staking, and you had such high staking APRs. And just when you thought staking APRs were coming down, a new chain would come up with higher staking APRs, and then all the capital would migrate there, right? So you're essentially going from staking to staking, and there's no DeFi ecosystem that's emerging. There's no like legitimate use cases of many of these really cool assets and chains that were emerging. So, liquid staking was like necessary at this point, right? And like we've sort of been working on liquid staking since like 2018 almost. Like uh, our co-founder Joe built like one of the first iterations of liquid staking at Hackathon Berlin 2018. Now I've been doing liquid staking research as a part of Chorus One, which is a validator in the space. So we were doing all of this. We also built like Lido for Solana, a part of the team that did that. So we were doing all of this, but a solution for Cosmos just didn't make sense, right? Like, how are we going to do it? There was no Cosmosm on Cosmos Hub. There was no way to deploy logic, right? Uh, so it really didn't make sense. And back then there was no osmosis, no proper IBC. Uh, it didn't make sense, right? Uh, but then last year, when interchain accounts came out, everything sort of started to fit in, right? The idea then was, hey, what if you can have a liquid staking protocol that can scale to hundreds, even theoretically thousands of chains, right? There's nothing stopping a protocol from scaling. And that's where like, this whole chain agnostic liquid staking solution idea came about, right? We have a sovereign chain with our own sovereign validator set and then we connect to other chains to provide liquid staking for them. So that's like the base idea of Quicksilver.
Perfect, man. And is this the first product that you guys are rolling out within the Cosmos, or is this going to be like the one thing that you guys focus on? Because what I've noticed throughout the last few months in the Cosmos ecosystem is that you have a lot of projects like Saga that are teaming up with Celestia, and you also have Osmosis Zone teaming up with other platforms and things of that nature. Are you guys just focusing on like LSDs on Cosmos, or do you guys plan on expanding out more thoroughly with your guys' services?
I think as of now, the focus is to do liquid staking on Cosmos. Uh, in like the medium term, we do want to build other things which facilitate liquid staking, right? With things that complement liquid staking well. Uh, those things we're always going to do. Quicksilver chain is at the end of the day a sovereign decentralized network. We can build anything, anybody can build anything. So yeah, like currently the focus is liquid staking, but you'll soon expand to products which facilitate liquid staking. But still very much in the IBC ecosystem. Though. Like I don't see us deploying contracts on other chains and doing liquid staking for them unless they have IBC enabled, right? Like currently IBC is expanding pretty fast to the substrate or the Polkadot ecosystem, Avalanche, Solana. So that definitely opens up doors, but it's like we go where IBC goes.
Perfect, man. And what are some of the differences between building, as you guys said, Lido on Solana versus building out Quicksilver via IBC?
Yeah, I think like one of the like in terms of like the development experience, like the biggest one obviously is that we're building a sovereign chain, not a contract. So there's a whole new layer to it, right? Which is you have your validators, you have to manage your validators, you have to perform chain upgrades, governance, voting. All of this obviously didn't exist if you just build a smart contract deployed on Solana, right? So that from a developer experience level uh, was big. But also another thing was that Lido for Solana was in many ways the Lido model. So there wasn't much like new designing that we had to do. But Quicksilver is a liquid staking design that's completely new. Like this kind of liquid staking design hasn't been implemented before. So there's a lot of exploration for us to do in terms of like product level, figuring out what goes where, what feature we need to provide, what makes sense, what's secure. Uh, so yeah, there was a lot of exploration level stuff we had to do, which was really fun.
So, in a nutshell, with Quicksilver, the user would be incentivized to use it because it provides the end user to use better capital management through enabling them to liquid stake their assets through the protocol. That's basically it, correct?
Yeah, that's the core value proposition. If you have an asset that's locked in staking, you're earning rewards on it, but you want liquidity on this asset, right? You want to use it in DeFi. You might want to sell it. You might want to do 10 other things with it, but you can't because it's locked. So what Quicksilver does is it frees that up by issuing like, the way I like to think about it is like a lock and key mechanism. If you imagine your stake position as like a vault, accruing rewards, what Quicksilver offers you is like a key, right? That's your Q asset. Whoever owns the key owns the underlying assets. So you can take those keys over, trade it, do whatever you want with it, but your assets are still sticking in that staking position, earning rewards.
That's awesome, man. So basically, through contributing to the network stability and decentralization, while still being able to move those assets around and trade, we're able to utilize those tokens in any other way that might bring the user returns, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, I guess the question that I want to follow that up with is, where did the origin story for Quicksilver come about? What was the one thing that you felt that was needed within the Cosmos ecosystem to bring about the Quicksilver protocol?
Yes, as I like briefly touched on before, like the three co-founders, we were in Chorus One, which is a validator which was already working on liquid staking. Right? I think we even coined the term liquid staking back in the day. So, like Chorus One was one of the earliest Cosmos Hub validators, and like those were very early days for proof of stake, right? But it was like pretty obvious back then that proof of stake can't really scale. The way Ethereum was scaling back in 2019, 2020, simply because it's not capital efficient. You have most of your tokens locked up, so they can't be used anywhere. Uh, so there's always this trade-off between security and like actual utility of proof of stake assets, right? So like the need for liquid staking was very clear for us for a long time, but the issue in Cosmos was how. Uh, as I mentioned, like there was absolutely no way to do it back then. And there were also additional challenges, right? Like as the Cosmos ecosystem grew, 2019, 2021, uh, you had like different dynamics emerge. Like you had like a massive governance scene that sprung up, right? Everyone was voting, and I can't seem to remember the exact statistics now, but I think Cosmos Hub has like record uh, participation of unique wallets in governance. Uh, so that entire scene was emerging, right? And you know, and people designing liquid staking protocols, we were like, okay, how do we deal with this now? How do we let people vote with staking derivatives? Um, and then there was also this whole like validator delegator dynamic that was popping up. Like delegators chose validators based on a bunch of different factors, right? Maybe they were bare metal, maybe they were contributing, maybe they were running relayers. There was all sorts of things. And the question was, okay, how do we take this choice element into account when designing a liquid staking protocol? Because the previous models of liquid staking was just, hey, the team goes out, picks 10, 15, maybe 20 validators and just distributes stake amongst them. They gain stake, they get rich, while everyone is excluded out of liquid staking. In an ecosystem like Ethereum, where nobody cares much about their validators, maybe that could work. But in Cosmos, we were like, okay, we got to solve for this.
That's beautiful, man. Well, a little background about myself. I got into the digital asset space about 5 years ago during the winter of 2017, and the Cosmos ecosystem wasn't even out yet. But I remember stumbling upon their Telegram group where Django Unchained was there, and there was only a couple hundred people. And then I read the white paper for IBC, and I was absolutely hooked on. And then, during the pandemic, is when I started becoming more involved within the community and all that stuff, going into Discord and interacting with other ecosystems built on Cosmos, such as Terra, Interchain, and Fetch AI, and of course, I'm going to find out that Binance was actually built on the Cosmos SDK, and throughout the majority of 2020, 2021, and 2022, that was predominantly my home base for DeFi. And I found you guys just scrolling Twitter, back in Q3 this year, and I thought like, wow, like Liquid Staking on the Cosmos, and through all the stuff that you had mentioned, you guys have some pretty cool features like unrestricted validator choice, scalability, governance by proxy, participation rewards, and a pretty frictionless UX. And so that's a little background about myself. So over here, what I'm doing here, because of Bitcoin, I love doing outreach with new projects that I believe can bring an insane amount of value to the Web3 and crypto ecosystems. So I want to get to know you for a little bit, man, and we can kind of touch back on Quicksilver. So how did you manage to come across Cosmos and all things IBC?
Yeah. I guess maybe I can also like start with how I got into crypto. That my gap between getting into crypto and getting into Cosmos was like very, very short. So the Ethereum probation period was not very long for me. So yeah, I was like, I was studying like economics in college, and I was like working on like monetary economics research, and then I was soon realizing that, hey, this is like overly complicated. It's not achieving anyone anything, and it just seemed like too much for me, right? So I started like looking at like these fintech solutions. Uh, so I was like, okay, let's try some of that. I was working in that sort of fintech asset issuance type space, but I really also wasn't working for me. Was I wasn't convinced. Had the same centralization issues, uh, and it was essentially one company running the show. And that's when I sort of found crypto, right? And I so used my fintech monetary economics background to jump into some very early like crypto startups, and it was largely like fiat to crypto sort of things because I worked in payments before. So yeah, I was doing that, and then I was just scrolling through Twitter, and then I saw these like correspond guys, uh, advertise like a research position. This is when I was like getting heaps into like crypto. And I was reading stuff, and this is when I found Cosmos. Uh, but I hadn't fully bought into it yet. Like I didn't see any like user-facing applications that I could actually use. Uh, so I was just like scrolling through, and these chorus one guys were advertising for like a research position. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's give that a shot. I applied, I got it, and that's sort of where I got into Cosmos because they put me into like this governance voting role. So I had to like read governance proposals, understand what was going on and come up with a vote for their validator. And that's when I'm like, holy shit, like Cosmos has so much discussion going on. Everyone cares so much. There's this like massive community around it. And that's when I started looking into it more and more and more. And yeah, now I'm full time doing Cosmos.
That's beautiful, man. I've also noticed that about the Cosmos community. Even with these things like Twitter Spaces, there's a variety of platforms that usually go live with content pretty much every day, even on weekends, 24/7. So I wanted to ask you, man, what are some of the things that you think can onboard the next few million users onto Cosmos IBC? How can we add in that value to be open not only to devs but the end user? What would you say, like maybe two or three things that not only the community but also devs can do to onboard more users?
Yeah, I think it essentially comes down to two things, right? Two like broad subcategories. The first is like UX, and the second is like cross-chain composability. Uh, UX is like the simple one, right, that everyone's talked about. Uh, you know, Cosmos and crypto in general doesn't have great UX. I know Kepler and Osmosis are really pushing the boundaries, and I'd say compared to many other ecosystems, we're still making significant progress, but it's not nearly there, right? Uh, UX is still not great. Uh, Mobile application infrastructure is still not great. And that's where like a lot of new users would come in, right? That's one sort of UX challenge. The second thing is also that many of these like inherent crypto products are very complicated. I mean, even take Quicksilver, for example, right? Liquid staking, choosing validators, all of this is still a bit heavy for your regular user. So you have to find a way to simplify it. Uh, and how that's done is depends on each product and depends on the way the user evolves. But that's clearly a challenge, right? The second thing is like cross-chain composability. Like an issue we have in Cosmos is that each chain acts like a silo almost. Uh, like IBC is cool. We do IBC transfers. The IBC transfer numbers are doing great. But still, each chain is like an economic silo of sorts. Querying information from other chains is very difficult. Getting oracles and other chains is still a bit of a pain. So building like truly cross-chain products is very difficult. Like, the whole like I'd say Quicksilver is somewhat like a Gen 1 cross-chain, like truly cross-chain product, where we can just be on one chain and do things on other chains, right? So we don't need to bring assets over to our chain. And that already was like such a complicated feat, right? Given that staking is one of the simplest things in Cosmos. Uh, but for other sort of use cases, this would be more and more difficult. Like let's say, oh, you want to build like an insurance product, right? And I have assets scattered across 50 chains. How does this insurance product know where I have these assets? Right? It's such a pain figuring that out. Uh, so yeah, I guess that's like a difficulty that us developers have to push through. But yeah, it's coming out. I mean, you have interchain accounts, interchain queries. It's making things simpler, but there's still a long way to go there.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with you. UIX and also mobile integration. I think that's something that can definitely help onboard the new users. But also, some of the cool features that I noticed with what you guys have at Quicksilver is that users can delegate to any validator and also retain those voting rights when they do use those LSDs on Quicksilver. And these features basically avoid concentration of the stake among the few players and also independent governance participation. So that sort of acts like as an incentive to use Quicksilver. So, getting back to that topic, what can we expect from Quicksilver? Say, like, if you want to go over a few details in your roadmap, perhaps what's coming for the first half of 2023. What are some things that you can tell us about? I'd love to have that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So the Quicksilver protocol went live early this year. We onboarded Stargaze, and we're going to onboard a few other chains like Region, Osmosis, Juno, Injective, Cosmos Hub. So onboard most of like the chains in Cosmos. That would be like a goal for the first quarter. Um, in terms of features, we're working on like the signaling intent feature, which like lets you choose your validators, right? There is like an added level of complexity in this because you can have your assets anywhere, right? And that's what's difficult to solve. But I think we have a solution on testnet. So yeah, hopefully, in March we can get that going. So you can have your assets. Okay, I guess just to give like a user context to this, let's say you come onto Quicksilver, minted 100 Q atom, and now you take it to an osmosis pool, right? But now you're not happy with your validator choices. You want to change it. Can you do it without pulling these assets out of the osmosis pool? The answer is like yes. That's what we want to facilitate. We don't want it so that people have to, move, exit out of their osmosis position, bring their assets out, and then change the validators or vote and things like that, right? So making this cross-chain thing work, that is March for us. And then after that's done, the next big thing would be like governance by proxy. Right? Even in governance, like the biggest challenge is determining where assets are. Right? What if you have assets on some unknown chain? How do we know that they exist? Uh, so I'd say like April, May is figuring like the voting side of it out. Like how do we include it in voting? How do we make sure that there's no attack, right? That someone is not able to borrow shit tons of assets and then make malicious votes. So I'd say that is like the final target for Q1. Yeah, I guess then we'd have delivered at least everything that we've been talking about for the longest time.
Beautiful, man. So for the Ethereum user, right? I come into Cosmos and I see all of these chains. I see Juno, I see Stargaze, and I see Osmosis. And then I see, essentially what's going to be the Lido of the Cosmos ecosystem. And I know there's another project by the name of Neutron, and they're essentially trying to build out the DeFi hub layer on the Cosmos hub. So with that being said, I'm not sure if you guys have spoken about it, but would there be some sort of integration to allow what you guys have built on Quicksilver onto something like Neutron?
I think Neutron might be working on sort of their own liquid staking solution, which is not really theirs. It's actually like the Lido liquid staking solution, right? So Lido contracts might be deployed in Neutron, but whatever assets that or whatever applications that Neutron has built, Q assets can definitely be used in those. So I know Neutron's working on this pretty cool interchain DEX, right? Using interchain accounts. Q assets can definitely be a part of that. And that's probably made easier by the fact that Quicksilver already has interchain accounts and we've been using it as a core feature. So things like that are definitely possible.
Perfect, man. Love the answer. And so if I'm an Ethereum user and I'm in the Cosmos, um, kind of the same thing as I brought up during the last question. But when I see you guys, how would you say what would be the key differences between Lido and what you guys are building at Quicksilver? What are some of the key differences, and also some similarities as well? Because there are some, but for the Ethereum based user that's mainly just been on ETH mainnet, how would you go about in giving not only the differences but also the similarities?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest similarity is in the type of asset that we issue. It's the same as Lido, right? It's essentially almost like a rebasing asset which gains value as underlying staking rewards are accrued. So you have a Q atom, which has a Q atom redemption rate. So you can claim back your Q atom for more and more atom as time goes on, right? That's what gives Q atom value. This is the same as Lido, right? So if you've been using STETH, this model should look very familiar to you. So that is like the one and only similarity, I'd say. And that's where the sort of the differences start, right? If you're an ETH user, you should probably start looking at, validators. Cosmos has like a delegated proof of stake consensus mechanism, which means that you have to look at your validators and choose them, right? It's not like depositing 32 ETH and running a validator. So, so that would be a really great start. Start looking at what validators are in the space, what they're doing, and how that sort of benefits you, right? Because Cosmos is built by validators. So once you're sort of familiar with that, the next big difference would be, okay, do you want to start choosing your validators? Uh, do you want to actually make some of these choices which last, right? You do that on Quicksilver. And then the third massive difference would be, can you vote with these assets? Now, in Ethereum, governance is not a thing. You don't have serious on-chain governance. Their only governance mechanism is some weird mix of off-chain councils, led by Vitalik type system, right? Which is not really great and not something that is a thing in Cosmos. So as an ETH user, maybe that's something you want to do, right? Look at these governance proposals, see how you'd like to participate. Uh, and again, it's now that Quicksilver enables you to do that, start using your voting rights and actually exercise that power that you have.
And what are some of the developments in the overall Cosmos ecosystem that you believe could add value to all things IBC? That could also potentially like integrate with what you guys are building at Quicksilver.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm most excited about is like the liquid staking module, the LSM that's coming out. So the LSM, what it essentially lets you do is if you're someone that's staking any Cosmos asset now, you'd be able to enter a liquid staking position instantly, right, without unstaking. This is something that only the Cosmos ecosystem will have. Liquid staking on every other ecosystem required you to unstake your assets, wait for the unbonding period, lose out staking reward, lose out on any potential airdrop snapshots, all of that, and move your asset into a liquid staking position. But in Cosmos, you can do that with one click, right? And sort of the back end of it is that in the Cosmos consensus engine itself, uh, it issues you like a non-fungible asset on your staking position. So if you've delegated like 1,000 atoms to validator A, you can claim like almost like an NFT, which says, okay, you've delegated 1,000 atoms to validator A, and you can deposit that NFT in Quicksilver, and then we'd issue you 1,000 Q atom, which you can then go use in DeFi, right? Now, this whole NFT element opens up like a massive new design space, right? What if we can do liquidations with this, right? What if someone accepts this as collateral or like, means of settlement, right? Currently, liquidations have been a massive issue, right? Whenever like a loan gets liquidated, assets are dumped into the market, and that creates like massive price turbulence. But what if you can give like an NFT as a liquidatable asset, right? So this entire new design space opens up, and that's something I'm really excited about.
And how would that work out? I know you mentioned NFTs, and I know on the Ethereum on Ethereum, not only mainnet but also on L2, like things on Arbitrum. There are some protocols that are trying to enable like NFT staking and posting your NFT as collateral and borrowing against it. So, do you think on Cosmos that would be possible with something like Quicksilver, perhaps enabling liquid staking NFTs? Again, I'm somewhat new to the idea of LSDs on Cosmos, so I wanted to get your take on that, and also some of the differences between trying to build that out on Cosmos with NFTs versus
Yeah.
something like the Ethereum mainnet.
Yeah. So like on Ethereum, what's happened, right? You've had staking derivatives and people have made NFTs out of it, right? You deposit 100 STETH into a vault and they mint you like an NFT which you can then go stake or do whatever you want with it, right? But in Cosmos, it's different in the sense that you're actually using the NFT to mint the liquid staked asset, right? So it's the other way around. And the NFT here is not issued by a contract or like a third party. It's actually issued by like the staking module of Cosmos itself, right? So in this case, the NFT is not a product. It's like a very core part of Cosmos staking in itself. Every Cosmos staking position, you can claim a non-fungible asset against it when the LSM comes in, right? When the LSM upgrade happens. Uh, so yeah, I guess that would be the biggest like technical difference. And obviously, given the fact that this is not a contract or like a third party issued NFT, it's essentially like your stake position. You can move your stake position from one chain to the other, one place to the other, wherever you want. The design space is open.
Beautiful, man. Thank you. Well, if anyone here in the crowd wants to come up and ask any questions, give any statements, feel free to do so. As a reminder, with Quicksilver Protocol and just talking shop, seeing what they're about, and yeah, feel free to do so. Would be happy to bring you up and we can discuss. So, Vish, one thing that I wanted to ask you is, do you see a future where Quicksilver can also be interoperable with ETH and build on top of ETH? Say maybe Arbitrum or maybe Optimism or perhaps something like ZK. Would love to know your thoughts on that. I'm a huge Ethereum fan as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally possible, right? Like, you could theoretically have like an ETH L2, um, which is IBC compliant. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's already a project like that. Um, I just haven't looked into it yet. Uh, but yeah, like that's sort of been the trend these days, right? We've seen Avalanche subnets, Polkadot parachains, so, Solana layer twos, all of which are like IBC compliant. That's definitely possible with E2, right? And once you have like a L2 which has IBC, we can immediately port over to it and take it from there. Right? So yeah, definitely doable.
And what are some of the problems that you've encountered trying to build out Quicksilver within Cosmos, and how did you overcome them? Because I know again, like as you said, building LSDs is on Cosmos is a completely different game than say building it on Ethereum. And you guys, to my knowledge, are are the first of the game when it pertains to bringing liquid staking derivatives platforms onto Cosmos.
Yeah, I think like in terms of problems, right? Like there've definitely been some. So like there have been other liquid staking solutions before, right? Like p-stake and stuff. But they use like very rudimentary methods because many of like the mechanisms like interchain accounts, interchain queries simply weren't available. Uh, so yeah, I guess navigating through that was like the biggest challenge because there's no real documentation on any of this. So you're figuring things out as you go. And that's sort of also the issue, like when you're developing things first, right? We had like the first interchain queries spec, which was made public, right? So all of that we had to build out from scratch. There was no documentation. There was no, you know, it's not like EVM, right? Where it's like a relatively friendly scripting language where you just script, we build contracts and like pre-existing information, right? When you're building like Cosmos modules, it's pretty much from scratch, which is building it. So yeah, I guess that would be like the biggest challenge.
And would you guys ever think about building out your own chain within the Cosmos hub? Or are you guys wanting to go on all these hubs one at a time? Like I know the next ones to launch are things like Neutron and Saga and eventually Celestia.
Yeah. So yeah, we'd onboard all of these assets. We're already like a sovereign chain. We're probably not going to be a chain under Cosmos Hub just yet. I think we think there's more time for that to develop. But yeah, we're essentially going to onboard all of these different assets. But we're going to ensure that sovereignty is maintained. That Quicksilver has its own validator set, its own community, and but we can expand outwards to other chains through interchain accounts, right? Without actually having to lease security from them or to build on top of them.
And being a Cosmos developer, I know at the current moment there's a need for a decentralized stablecoin, but I wanted to know, how does that look like in 18 to 24 months? How do you think a Cosmos based stablecoin that can be across all of these chains and be that unit that is this sort of decentralized money? Because USDC is not really the answer. How would a stablecoin be built on the Cosmos? What do you think the correct framework for that would be, and how do you think it looks like?
Yeah, for sure. Like currently, there's a bunch of contenders battling it out for this. I think there's Agorix, Interprotocol, Comdex is building CMST. I think there's Silk built by Shade on Secret Network. So there are a bunch of stable coins coming up. And I think all of them are using like the MakerDAO model, right? Over collateralized assets, mint stable coins. And most of these protocols are going to support Q asset collaterals, right? So you can deposit your Q assets and mint stable coins off of it. I think the MakerDAO model is the most secure to begin with. Uh, and definitely after like the Terra crash, I don't see many people experimenting on algorithmic or non over collateralized models, right? Over collateralization seems to be sort of the mantra everyone's going for. Uh, I think that's great. We definitely a good way to start. But there's also like I think the way forward, for stable coins which are not fully stable, if that makes sense. So assets like bonds, right, where you have debt of a lending protocol represented as a stable coin, uh, which you can buy and sell. So you buy an asset, pay off a debt. Many ways like how a bond works. Uh, if I was to give you like an Ethereum comparison, I think Alchemix does something like this. I think that's really cool, and it will supplement these over collateralized stable coins. But yeah, I think that's sort of the way it will go. Like we have a bunch of these initial stable coins, and then your more experimental stable coins that start coming out afterwards.
Vish, and with you having your onboarding onto the digital asset space, being exposed to Cosmos right off the bat, what are some of the things that you would want to see built out on Cosmos once the Lambda and the Gamma upgrades come to the IBC? What are some things that you would want to be built out on Cosmos? Do you think it's like GameFi, things relating to the metaverse? What are your thoughts on that? Because I believe that that is something that could be implemented within the IBC. Maybe have something like a Decentraland or a sandbox built on Cosmos, and having a bridge back to Ethereum, and having native assets like interchange with each other. So say like something is built on Neutron, right? Like a sandbox, and I have a native asset within that platform, and I can exchange that asset, right, on a user with Ethereum, sort of like this cross-chain compatibility. Or if you even want to take it even further, perhaps have that integrated into a liquid staking platform, and then having interoperable liquid staking assets, right? Do you think
Yeah.
this would be possible? And also, what are some things that you would want to see rolled out over the next few years? So it's kind of like a two-part question. Would love to know your thoughts on it, brother.
Yeah. I'm actually hugely into like GameFi, and I think that's the biggest thing that Cosmos is missing. Uh, and I think it should happen, right? Like the way I see it, it's like one of the best sources of virtual asset value accruals. It's like the most immediate, right? Uh, People actually purchase these things in games because there's like a genuine demand for it, right? It's the closest you can get to genuine demand in crypto, I feel. Uh, so massively into GameFi, I think it needs to come to Cosmos. One of the things hindering it might be like the lack of a massive NFT marketplace. I think Stargaze is out there; they're doing a great job. Uh, but that whole like art NFT scene is just beginning, right? So if I was a game dev, would I deploy on a Cosmos chain, or would I rather just deploy on something like Immutable X, which already has you know that whole gaming infrastructure and marketplace associated with it? Because at the end of the day, as a game, I make money if I sell NFTs. Um, so yeah, I think that's one of the only things hindering game development on Cosmos. But again, as you mentioned, right, if there was some sort of like bridge to Ethereum, that could definitely solve this. And like the whole thing about like interoperable liquid staking derivatives tying into this, I think that's a great idea. Like that's definitely something that is possible for sure, and we should do it.
And outside of that, what are some money market ideas that you think could be implemented within the Cosmos? I know the Mara protocol was trying to build out something like that in time on Terra. Do you think with these upgrades coming to IBC that would be possible? Sort of like an asset that reflects T bills and things like that, or perhaps even, excuse me, a platform that is sort of like this decentralized stock market, right? Um, I'm not sure how that would work out because it's been attempted many times, but I wanted to know your thoughts on that, given that you're a lot more familiar with the Cosmos SDK versus someone like me that is just more of a user when it pertains to these platforms.
Yeah, I think like with regards to the money market, I'm really looking forward to something like Alchemix. I think that would work really well in Cosmos. And that sort of goes into like this T-bill model, right? Where, in the protocol, you take out debt and that debt is minted as a stable coin, right? And you pay back that debt in stable coins. So essentially like you're monetizing debt, right? That's almost like, like buying a bond for that matter. So that I think is a cool and innovative money market design that will come out, and that can tie into like staking and staking derivatives, right? It's like you take out this loan and you can have it be paid by staking rewards, right? So you lock like a stake position in the protocol, mint out some stable coin, and as your staking rewards accrue, you can use that to pay off your loan, right? And with regards to like these upgrades coming up, I think the LSM is like the biggest thing here because it can also be used for liquidations, right? Like the current issue with like money markets like this is okay, I have 10,000 Q atom locked up, but what's the liquidity like for Q atom, right? It's probably much less than atom itself. Uh, so you can't support big money markets on it. Uh, but if I could liquidate my staked position itself, so I could instantly burn my Q atom and claim back staked atom and then try liquidating that, right? So that opens up like a whole new dimension for money markets. Uh, and I think most money markets will either use them directly, like Mars and Umi and stuff, or there'd be like these like liquidation protocols, right, which abstract away like the complex liquidation logic, and they connect into these money market protocols. But yeah, either way, I think that whole space of utility is great.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And if I'm an end user on Cosmos, and say I wanted to build my own chain on Cosmos, where would I go first? What sort of resources do you recommend I go to for that?
Yeah, I'd say like check out like Ignite CLI. Like they really simplified the process of spinning up a chain. I think it's also called Starport, if I'm not wrong. Uh, so that's definitely a great place to start. But if that's not your jam, maybe Saga is a good place too. Like creating a chain, leasing a validator set, simplified there. So those are the two things you want to solve, right? How do I spin up a generic Cosmos chain easily, just so that it doesn't take me months and months? And where do I get my validators from? Who's validating this chain? So if you can lease your validators from someone and use something like Ignite CLI to build like the scaffolding of a chain, then you can easily set something up. I'd say that's actually the easiest way to setting up a chain.
Beautiful, man. And how do we go about implementing more ZK type features that Ethereum is building out? I haven't really heard too much of it outside of, as you mentioned, things like Shade Protocol. Is it something because of the current SDK stack, or is it because most of the developers are focusing on more like DeFi centric sort of things, and there's not really much demand for it at the current moment? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's mainly demand. Like I know the guys at Anoma are building something interesting. But yeah, I think it's mostly given the fact that it's relatively early, and also given the fact that in Cosmos, privacy has not been much of like a topic of conversation. Things have more revolved around sort of public accountability, public governance, that sort of thing. It's very out of the open. So the whole privacy narrative hasn't picked on yet, but I'm definitely seeing it being a niche, right? Like the protocols are definitely coming out, and yeah, it's going to happen, but it'll take some time.
And would that be able to be implemented with something like Quicksilver that's working on liquid staking derivatives?
Yeah, we've thought about this, right? Like, yeah, theoretically, yes. We might have to optimize a bit for these protocols, but we can definitely like maintain privacy and still issue staking derivatives, right? There's no trade-off there.
Cool, man. So I see we're closing onto the hour. So if anyone just came into the space, welcome. I typically host these spaces at 7 p.m. Eastern time, but usually when I have special guests, there might be a time zone difference. So if you enjoy content like this, where we onboard DeFi devs, protocols, founders, people from VC, or people from within the crypto Twitter space and Web3 communities, feel free to follow us here at Because Bitcoin. My name is Wabi. I've been in the space for about 5 years now, and I love all things Web3 and crypto. And if you guys want to catch up on this space as soon as it ends, it will be uploaded onto our YouTube in about 5 to 10 minutes after the space. And I'm here with Vish Mudali from the Quicksilver protocol, and they are building liquid staking derivatives on the Cosmos ecosystem hubs. And we're just talking shop, getting to know him, and also what Quicksilver is about, and some other things pertaining to the overall Cosmos hub and all things IBC. If you've been with us the entire time, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and joining us in this conversation. We thank you. We thank you for the support. And feel free to give us a follow here at Because Bitcoin and turn on bell notifications so that you are made aware of when these spaces go live. I want to thank you, Vish, and also the people behind the Quicksilver Protocol banner for coming and talking shop with us. We want to thank you. Any last statements that you guys want to give? Feel free to give it. I want to thank you guys so much. God bless you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's a great time. Always love talking about Cosmos and Quicksilver. Yeah, I guess my last message would be if any of you guys are interested, have any questions, please do come check us out on Telegram, Twitter. We're always happy to talk to you, happy to respond to any queries. And yeah, even if it's just like a general chat, we're open to it.
Perfect, man. So we'll give it a few moments in case anyone wants to come up and give any statements or questions. And if not, we'll just wrap it up here.
The
trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm gonna get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, and you say, I'm gonna trust the statisticians. You would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000, depending on how you wanna measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.